Hello, this is Jim McKeeth, and welcome to this Developer Skill Sprint. Get productive with IDE coding tricks you need to know. This skill sprint works with all IDEs, all platforms, with only Object Pascal. Some of this stuff will apply to C++, but instead of delineating which works and which doesn't work, we're going to say Object Pascal only and go from there. So we're going to talk about some of the new productivity enhancements added in XE8. This includes a number of enhancements. We're only going to talk about a fraction of what's available. Start talking about smart highlighting, the clipboard history, MultiPaste, refactoring, some smart editing, etc. If you want to get access to the notes and links from this slide, you can follow that link there, embt.co/sprint-productivity, and that will take you to the notes for this skill sprint. And now we're going to jump right into a demonstration. First productivity enhancement I want to show you is the new smart highlighting. So this comes in two different flavors. The first one here is the flow control highlighting. So typically your program execution goes from top to bottom, but certain keywords have an effect on the flow of your program. So for example, abort is the silent exception that causes it to bubble back up the stack. Break causes it to exit a loop, continue goes on to the next iteration, halt, etc. All have different effects on the execution of your code. So this icon that's added here shows you an indication that your flow is going to change. So this block of code won't actually execute, won't actually compile, but it shows you all the different keywords that can trigger the changes in flow and the example of the icons that can be displayed for you. Actually, under options, you can change this if you want to have these icons displayed at the end or at the beginning. Next one I'll show you here is the structural highlighting. So this is a way for you to see where your begin and end blocks line up. For me, it's really nice to be able to, if I have some code that's maybe not formatted correctly and I see these lines aren't lining up, I can come in here and correct this until I get them right in the right spot and they all line up. And that's a really reassuring to me to know that my code's all lined up. Now there's a configuration option here under Castella options. Under smart highlighting, I have this set to structural highlighting, mark hanging blocks to no. The default is yes. So if this is yes, I'll show you how this behaves. If you are like to put your begins at the end here, that's what by default when the structure shows the hanging blocks is set true. But if you come here and change that, study options, smart highlighting, hanging blocks to no, then you see it gets rid of that line that goes all the way down. It breaks the line so that it's in those two spots there. So it just depends on your preference of how you like to format your code. And it works with you on whichever preference you prefer. Next thing I'll show you here is the navigation toolbar, which is right here, right above the code editor window. There's a few different parts to it. The first part here is the used units list. This lists all the units that are used in your application, and you can access that via the keystroke Control-Alt-N, Control-Alt-U, and it brings it up right there in your code so you can see what units you're using and jump right into those units. Pretty useful. The next one here is the unit section list. This lets you jump to the parts of your unit, the sections of your unit. So you can jump to the start of the file, jump to the end of the file, interface section, implementation section, etc. And this is available through Control-Alt-N-S. And it brings it up here, and we'll jump to the interface section, just like that. The next one here, I'm going to get down some inside of a method, is the type section. So this lists all the types in your unit. Now, typically, you're only going to have one type in a unit. That's kind of the recommended methodology. But sometimes you have associated types that all get grouped together in a unit, or you have types that are dependent on other types that you just only being used by that type. So you put those in the same unit. In that case, you'll see a list of all the types in your unit here. So let's go ahead and jump back into system classes, and we see, look, here's a list of all the types in system classes. And I can easily jump to one of those types. And again, this is accessible from a hotkey by Control-Alt-N-T. So N is navigation, T for types. And we'll just jump to E-file error, and there we are. So you can also jump to the methods of a type, and that's with this window here, the method window or member window. So this shows that I only have two members here, the flow control highlighting and the structural highlighting. And one thing that's cool about this is it's auto updating. So right now, if I click up here, I'm in flow control highlighting. And if I click in here, I'm in structural highlighting. So you see updates up there. Now this is really especially useful if you have a longer method that you can't see all on the screen at once. So right now I can't see the prototype for my method I'm in right now, but I can still tell where I'm at. So that's useful there. And the last place that you can go is the smart symbol search. So we'll do Control-Alt-N-F, and that's actually this button here. And this lets you search and find things that are in here. So I can say flow control highlighting and jump there. One thing that's really cool also is I can also do SH structural highlighting. And so what I did there is it's looks at the case of this and it understands that we typically use this camel case or Pascal case where we highlight the words in here. And so SH is structural highlighting. And so it says, oh, you're talking about structural highlighting. It jumps straight to structural highlighting. Now you'll also notice it lists the members that are in my other units here. So class system.classes is still open. So it lists those as well. So I can jump to any classes across multiple files using the smart symbol search. Great way to quickly navigate around your application and get where you need to go. Once you find what you're looking for, double click it and it takes you there. So you're familiar with Pascal. You know that we have a interface and implementation section, and your prototype of your method is here. So the procedure flow control highlighting is declared here and here. Now sometimes you need to change that, and usually we have to go and change it in both places because they have to stay in sync. Well, it turns out you can simplify that without having to edit in both places. So we'll say new parameter of type integer. And all I have to do is hit Control-Alt-Shift-P. And look at that. It added it up here for me automatically. And I can do the same thing here. I can say another one. Capitalize that. And this one's a string. And Control-Alt-Shift-P. And it gets added down there. So we can quickly change these prototype synchronization between the implementation and interface section without having to edit in both places. Especially useful when you have a much larger file that you'd have to scroll up and down and to edit. There's a refactoring that also applies here. So I can go in here to the Castella refactoring menu and add parameter. And so here we can add a new parameter. And this is useful if you're adding a parameter where the method's already being used. And I'll show you why. So optional one, and we'll say this is an integer, and the default value, it automatically puts a default value on here, so I can scroll over so you can see that. And the default value is so that you don't have to pass that in. So I'll put the default value of 0. And so what that's done is if this parameter, or if this method was already being called someplace, and I added a new parameter to it, I'd have to go and change every place I was calling it from to include that parameter. But by including a default value, it doesn't require that anymore, because if it wasn't there before, which it wasn't, then it will just use the default value. So this way you can quickly refactor your signatures and still keep your code compilable and ready to run. You can also rename a method. So this one is another refactoring. So if I come here, select this method, Castalia refactoring rename method. I can rename this method to example code, and it renames it in both places. I hit enter. If this was being used someplace, it would also rename it in the place it's being used. Very useful. So let's take a look at some real great productivity code. So in here, let's say I want to declare a variable down here at the end of this unit. And normally I'd have to come here to the top and add a variable declaration, but I can just say var gem of type string, and it's gone up here and declared gem of type string, and put me back here where I was editing, and I can say equals gem McKeeth, just like that, and I've declared my variable inline without having to scroll up and edit in different places. Very useful to keep that flow going as you're writing code. So there's also a surround smart key. So if I select any value here and I hit the open parentheses, it will automatically surround that with parentheses. So this can be useful if you have complex if statements, complex math, etc. You can also use the brackets, the angle brackets, not the angle brackets, the square brackets, in order to put brackets on things if they're entered for array identifiers and stuff like that. So the home key has also been expanded. So by default, when I hit home, it takes me to the home of the line. That's what you expect it to do. But now if I hit it a second time, so if I'm at the home, the start of the line, I hit home a second time, it takes me to the beginning of the code on that line. Now this is especially useful if you're on a line that's nested like this here. So I hit home once, it takes me to the start of the line, including all the blank space. Again, it takes me here. So usually when you go home, you want to go to the start of the code. So all I have to do is hit it twice, and I'm at the start of the code, no matter where I'm at. So here I'll go to the end, start back at the beginning of the line. I'm going to make some changes. Makes it really easy to navigate around. Otherwise, you're doing home and control right and stuff like that. So little productivity boost there. We can expand a selection here. So if I hit Control-Alt-J, it's going to select what I'm on. But then if I hit it again, it's going to expand that selection in a smart way. So again, 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 and until I find what I want. And then I can use, for example, the surround with a comment, for example, and comment that code out. And I should have expanded that one more time to get that semicolon there, but that's okay. You still get the point of the way that works. One last thing I want to show you is the identifier case correction. Now this is optional and by default turned off. So you go under Castalia options, case correction, and I've turned it on. And these are the triggers. So the first one, there's a space, period, etc., all these different characters here. And what this does is it automatically corrects the case of the identifier typing. Now, Object Pascal is not case sensitive, which is one of the things I like about it, because you know, have people doing crazy things with uppercase C means this, lowercase c means that. Who cares? That's too easy to make a mistake. But I still want to have my code using consistent casing, and so that's where this comes in. So if I type in Jim and hit space, it corrects the case of that identifier. Same thing with if I type something more complicated like structural highlighting. I guess I would do this in lowercase. STRUCTURALHIGHLIGHT. Now I'd never type that without using code completion, but if I did and hit spacebar, boom, it corrected the case for me automatically. Very cool way to have consistent casing throughout your application without you needing to do that. So now I'll show you some other things here under the Castalia menu. We have the MultiPaste. Now this is really useful if you've ever had like some text that you want to embed as data or a SQL statement you want to embed as data. So I'm going to just go ahead and select 2 lines here. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm coming to MultiPaste. And in MultiPaste, I can add text before or after each line. So let's say this was a SQL statement, multi-line SQL statement. I can just come in here and put a tick at the beginning, a tick at the end with a plus, and I'm ready to paste that in to my application. So as soon as I hit OK, it's going to paste this in like you see here, and ready to go. So if I was pasting a SQL statement, all I have to do is paste that in, remove the last plus, replace it with a semicolon, and then put a name of the SQL value, etc., assignment statement, etc., whatever I wanted to do in there. Very great way to take that bulk groups of data that you might have and insert it into your code in a way that's ready to use. I found myself a lot of times before I'd be doing this, down left quote, down left quote, down left quote, end quote, end quote, end quote, end quote. You've probably done that before where you're trying to format the code. This way is a great way to do that without all sorts of crazy keyboard calisthenics. Hit cancel because I don't want to paste that in there. Also under here we have another clipboard option, which is the clipboard history. So this is a list of all my history in my clipboard. And for some reason it's blank right now. So let me grab some more items. Castalia, clipboard history. Oh, I know, so I just rebooted. So it's only since I booted up. So you see here I've added another thing in there. And let's copy this here. And Castalia, clipboard history. So we see it's a history of all my clipboard items. Now, if you're like me, there's probably been some point where you've copied something to the clipboard that you're wanting to save, to paste someplace else, and then you're going along, you see something else that you need to copy to the clipboard, and then you do some sort of crazy thing where you're like, okay, I'll paste that here, copy this clipboard, paste it there, and then come over there and copy this back to the clipboard again, cut it to the clipboard, so it's back in the clipboard. You don't have to worry about that anymore. This keeps a history of things in your clipboard. It goes like probably 5 or 6 items at least. It's the deepest I've ever seen it, but it might go deeper than that. Like I said, once you reboot though, it goes away, and you can see the things here. Now if I want to just copy this back to the clipboard, I put abort back in the top of my clipboard. and then I can select something and paste it into the editor. So let's go ahead and paste that into the editor, which was a bad idea because now my code won't compile. But you get the idea about how that works. Let me go ahead and open up a different project here. And we're not going to save the changes because I made a mess of things. And this one's got a little more code to it, a lot going on here. I'm going to show you the code analysis. Now, the code analysis does a number of different analyses of your code. So we see here, this is the length, this is the number of statements in each method. And so you can sort this by each of these columns. And what this is useful for is to find code smells or things that may indicate that you need to refactor some code. So if this length gets high, you might say, whoa, 100's too long of a method. I need to go in here and refactor that, break that into multiple smaller methods. It actually will colorize these things. So if these values get high, you'll see different colors show up to indicate that those are high values. Parameter count, how many parameters you're passing to your methods. Again, if it's too many parameters, it just gets too hard to manage that. Depth of your if statements, nested if statements, that can be an issue that indicates lots of code paths. Cyclomatic complexity is serial if statements. And so what that indicates is how many code paths you have. And so the more code paths you have, the harder it is to make sure all those code paths are behaving the way expected to, especially for like code coverage unit testing. And then toxicity is kind of a meta score. It's includes all these different values in here. And again, you want to look for high toxicities, and those are things you're going to want to refactor. So we see this one with a length 15 and a cyclomatic complexity of 5. It's got a toxicity of 0.5. So it's the highest one in here. So this is useful to, like I said, find places that you need to spend time refactoring, cleaning your code, making it simpler and easier to work with. And the last one here is the project statistics. So the project statistics shows you where your time is spent in your project. So we spent 13 minutes editing this project here. And then here's designing, inspecting, compiling, other total, and as well as time in the debugger. So other you see is ticking up right now. So I'm not doing anything else. And so other is ticking up. And that's this gray section here. You'll see it kind of, that pie chart section expand out. You can check this into source control if you want to share it across multiple users, or you can keep it just as a per user thing and keep track of how you're spending your time inside of a project. So that's been a quick overview of some of the new productivity enhancements available in XE8. I really didn't even get into all the various refactorings in here, but there's some great ones. For example, eliminate with. So if you find a with statement in some code you've inherited, select that one, and it will eliminate the with, remove the with, and replace all the calls to the using the item that was in the with before. Inline temporary variable takes a temporary variable and replaces it with its value, whereas introduce an explaining variable lets you select a value that, for example, you're passing in something to a method that you're calculating inline, select that, introduce explaining variable, it introduces an explaining variable that then explains what that value is. So it's kind of the opposite of inlining temporary variable. Split temporary variable. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all these. Lots of great refactorings. You can find out more about these in the DocWiki. So here are some links for more information. These all go to the DocWiki. Really, that Castalia overview link, the first one there, has links to get you to everything else eventually, but we'll go ahead and point those out. You can find out about like refactoring, which we just talked about, a couple of the refactorings. There's more refactorings there. The MultiPaste, which is the one where you can edit multiple lines before pasting them into the IDE, the Clipboard History, code analysis, the project statistics, and the Castalia options where you can go in and customize the way Castalia works. So it is really going to give you the most productivity for you specifically. Next time, we're going to look at building multiple form factors with a real-time preview of each UI. This is a really, really cool feature, and I'm really excited for this one, so be sure you check this out next week. If you do not yet have XE8, download the trial and take advantage of these RAD offers. You can get the 10% discount, the free bonus pack, and the save 45% if you're upgrading for XE2 or earlier. For more information, check out Embarcadero.com/RAD offer, and these offers expire on May 31st. And now it's time for Q&A, but I'm going to bring up that slide with the resources for you as well.
So the question here, if this, if what I'm showing here works with C++, VCL, FireMonkey, etc. So this does work the same on VCL, FireMonkey, console applications, any type of application development you're doing, as long as you're doing Object Pascal. The structural highlighting works on C++, but there are plans, they're adding more features on C++ in the future. But for right now, like I said, everything works just on Object Pascal, but works across all project types. The question about the keyboard shortcuts, there's a few DocWiki links. If you follow those there, that covers from the keyboard shortcuts. There's other DocWiki links that will cover other keyboard shortcuts, and some of them here are available in the question log, like the default keyboard shortcuts page in DocWiki. So the question here about if the Castalia plugin will be available for free functionality for all XE8 users. So as of XE8, Castalia is built into the IDE. There are a couple things that were in XE7 that aren't in XE8 as far as Castalia goes, and those were part of the integration process as they went through and found some things that were causing some stability issues, and they've took those out temporarily, and while they refactor those and fix the bugs to make them more stable. So hopefully we'll see those come back later, but for right now they're not available, and that's just to improve IDE stability. Do the code analyses check all projects within a project group, or could it be analysis only active projects in the project group? I believe it's only active projects in the project group. Yeah, only active project that they check. The question about connecting Team Foundation server, I'm not sure if there's a free one that does that, but there is if you go to apocalypse.com has one, but it's not free. So apparently they don't support XE8 yet. Contact their support, and I'll send them an email as well and see if they can support that and to get updated to the latest version. So I found a lot of sites will update to the latest version but not get all the pages on their site updated. So even if they don't say XE8 yet, sometimes if you download them, they already work on XE8. But if not, then you can contact their support department and let them know that it needs to be updated. So the question here about the bookmarks editor in XE2 through 7 is on the bar above your code. Can you put it back? I'm gonna have to, let me think on that one. I'll have to look at that because I don't recall offhand how to put that back there or how to deal with that. I'll update the blog post. If you go to embt.co/sprint-productivity, you can see the blog post that accompanies this, and it has links to the some of the different resources there, and I'll add the default keyboard shortcuts link there as well, and I'll also update that to cover the bookmarks bar in the editor. And I think that's it for questions. Let me look through quick, see if I missed anything. If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in now. And like I mentioned in the video, this really is just covering the new IDE productivity features. So I didn't cover things like sync edit, the existing refactorings, and other things like that. So there's way more productivity tips than we could have covered here in this 20-minute skill sprint. So take a look at the DocWiki. There's more information there beyond even the new Castalia features. Like I said, I was actually at a Delphi Developer Days, and Ray Konopka was talking about productivity things, and he mentioned sync edit, and most people in the room didn't know sync edit. So there's probably lots of features in IDE, lots of productive features in IDE that have been around for a while that you may not be aware of. So check out the DocWiki to find some more information about those, and hopefully you can improve your coding productivity.
So we had a question here. Does Castalia work okay with the CN Pack? Are you familiar with that? I'm not sure.
Well, I'm familiar with CN Pack. I don't see why it shouldn't, unless you have something specific to report of some kind of collision in functionality, hotkeys, or whatever. Jim, have you heard of anything? I haven't heard of anything, as far as a problem.
I'm not sure that Jim's there, but I'm sure he'll join us shortly. He's in the chat room. He just isn't quite responding at the moment.
Maybe he's getting his audio set up. But
Yeah.
I mean, if the person who posted the question, because I'm not at the screen, I'm at a different microphone now, knows of something specific, or if it's more of a general question, I have not heard of any issues. But
Well, I think he had a follow-up comment. Was thinking specifically of the syntax highlighting. So
I don't know what would I'll have to stick CN Pack in again and see who gets control of the editor display.
Okay.
You may have to turn something on and off depending on functionality that you want to use. And if you saw in the demo, you'll see there's a Castalia menu where you can disable and turn off highlighting or change features and so on. But that would be a good thing to test and then see who gets control at what time.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Okay, next question.
I'm back now.
Oh, hey, Jim. Welcome.
I stepped up for a minute and missed the time.
We're glad to have you. All right, our next question is, how do...
It seems like I've heard that people have used CN Pack with Castalia and had no problems with it, but it's probably worth trying it again with the latest release.
Yep.
Okay, great. How do the Classic and Castalia refactorings work together? Do I have to close one and stick with it? Are there hotkeys for Castalia refactoring operations?
So currently the two refactorings are two separate engines, and you can use, there's no reason to stick to one or the other. You can intermix them as you need to use them. I did some testing and used both and found that they both worked fine. I don't think there is any hotkeys beyond the menu hotkeys. So you can still use the menu hotkeys in order to activate the Castalia hotkey refactorings, but I don't think there's any refactorings beyond that. Not that I could find, at least. And Hugo's reporting that Castalia works great with XE, with CN Pack and XC7. So.
Oh, thank
you. Yeah, like I said, I heard people using it successfully before, but maybe it's changed in XE8, but we'll give it a shot and find out.
Okay. Question from Stephen here. Has the Castalia refactoring menu been replaced by the traditional refactoring menu, or do they both exist with overlapping functionality?
Currently, they both exist. In the future, like I mentioned, in the future they're going to be integrated together, but right now they're two separate engines. There is some overlap. I found that some of them work a little differently than the other refactorings, and so some of it could be a matter of preference, choosing which one you prefer to work better. But yeah, there is a little bit of overlap in there as well, but I think having more than one way to do things is not a problem.
Okay, great. Next question from Dan. If you add a method either in the interface or implementation section, will it automatically add to the other section?
So it will not automatically add, but you can use class completion, which is Control-Shift-C, and that will add it to the other section. So Control-Shift-C will add a prototype or an implementation, and then I spaced the other hotkey. The other hotkey for the update is the one you want to use to, I think it's Control-Shift-P, will update the prototype if you make a change to it after the fact. So between those two combinations, you're good to go.
All right, we had a comment that was a nice presentation, so good job, Jim. Thank you for your effort on that. And I think with that, let's see here. When can we expect full support for C++? As most of these are Delphi specific.
There's no date specifically. I mean, there's work going on to add more C++ support for these productivity features, so stay tuned.
Yeah, when it's ready.
Yep, when it's ready.
All right, we'll leave the questions open for a few more moments. At this time, we don't have any more.
There's a lot of good documentation in the DocWiki for these new productivity features, so definitely check out the DocWiki. And also, I did get into a lot of the pre-existing productivity features that have been around for a while, like sync edit. And I did like class completion, which was a question around that as well. So check out the DocWiki. I added a link to the blog post that goes with this. If you follow that URL there, the mbt.co/sprint-productivity, there's a link to the
default character or keyboard mapping, and you can go through there and see some of the maybe some features you've missed. For example, IDE Insight. If you're not using IDE Insight, you are missing out on a huge productivity boon there. It's one of those things, once you start using IDE Insight, you will not want to use it any other way as far as the way it's getting things done in the IDE. And IDE Insight, I believe, works just fine with C++ as well as Object Pascal. I've used it in both situations, and I can't think of any features that would be Object Pascal specific. So that's a very, very useful productivity feature there as the IDE Insight. So check that one out.
Let's see. We have a quick comment from Kevin. Thanks for the presentation. Looking at the summary of keyboard shortcuts, can you please let us know where that list is?
If you go to that blog post that's linked to there at embt.co/sprint-productivity, there is a link down at the bottom that it's a collection of the default keyboard shortcuts. And then some of the ones are mentioned is specifically in like the Castalia articles that are also linked to from there. So, for example, if you go into the, I don't have the blog post open in front of me. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. If you go into the link for like a prototype synchronization, for example, it will tell you what the keyboard shortcut is for that. So if you read more about how to use prototype synchronization, it will tell you the keyboard shortcut. Like I said, and they're also on the, let's see if that has the proto.
I put the.
Yep, so in the default keyboard shortcuts page also lists the Castalia shortcuts. So it has Control, Alt, Shift, P.
Yeah, I put the link to the Castalia part on the shortcuts page.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's also in there. So.
Okay, we have a next question here from Scott. Is there any tool for managing interface synchronization?
Unfortunately, interface means a couple different things. So do you mean the interface and the implementation section of the units, or an interface as in a contract for what a class implements, or an interface as in a user interface? Contract. I believe Model Maker Code Explorer has one of their tools has that in it, but I'm not positive. There is not. I don't think there's anything built into Castella CN Pack or GXPerts that does that. But I think Model Maker Code Explorer. I believe they have. In the Code Explorer has a wizard that does that, but I'm not positive. Seems like I remember seeing that a while ago. I'm on Model Maker's site here. It says, I'm just skimming through this, and I see a thing that says you can drag interface members on a class to implement the interface, for example. So it does have some things for interfaces. So I will give you a link to their site, and they do have support for XE8 as well. So I remember using their tools a while ago, and I was really impressed. There was a lot of really great functionality in there for changing the paradigm of the way you work with code. Instead of code being a text file that let you treat code as models and to move things around and stuff like that. So recommend that one. Another great add-in tool for Delphi.